So how's your matrix working? Let's check it out and see. Hey everybody, thanks for joining us. We're the DCSI Parts Guys. We're presented by Dealership CSI. We're powered by ESPM. And today we've got part 3 of the myth of the 40% margin. I'm Rick. Here's Jerry. How you doing today, Jer?
I'm doing real good, Rick. Glad to be a part of this again, and we'll bring you some good information today about price matrices and some ways you can use to help get to that 40% margin we've been talking about over the past 2 episodes.
Well, we have been talking about it, Jer, and we've had a lot of good information in parts 1 and 2. Last episode, part 2, we talked about some manufacturer margins, and then we showed some examples of discounting and what happens when those margins are substandard. And I wanted to thank one of our guys, our senior consultant, Randy Hayes, for those formulas and examples. He's been working with one of his clients and showed me some of those formulas that he put together and examples, and it just kind of blew me away. But we don't realize what the final result is unless we stop and take a look at the each calculation and each transaction, and that's hard to do when you're busy and you're selling parts and things are rocking and rolling. So today, Jer, we're talking about a couple of ways that we can overcome those substandard margins, and one of them is going to be the price matrix. And you know, the price matrix has been around for a long time. In some ways it's got a bad rap. What do you see out there with your guys, and how's the general feeling towards price matrix?
Well, Rick, I think there's been a lot of discussion about matrices. We use the dealership price matrix in many cases in order to try and boost up those gross profit margins. And obviously, when we went through the downturn in the economy, some people got more sensitive to pricing issues. The internet's out there. Everybody's checking prices on the internet. It's readily available to most people, but you're still entitled to make a fair gross profit margin, and that's what we're trying to show you some examples of how to do that. And you have to be careful with how you use a price matrix. Obviously, you can't just use it across the board on everything, and that's why we're going to get into some examples about how you might want to set that up and some ways that you can use that matrix to your benefit.
So, Jer, the price matrix that traditionally is used, we talk about using it on our retail sales out in the shop. We talk about front counter retail. What's the use of a matrix when we're doing wholesale business?
Well, Rick, that's where it gets to be another sensitive issue. The parts manager is normally tasked with obviously increasing sales, and a lot of them feel that the only way that they can do that is to increase their wholesale business. So they're sometimes reluctant to use that price matrix with wholesale customers. We want to talk to you a little bit about that and really recommend that if you're going to use a price matrix in your dealership for your retail customers and your shop customers, you need to kind of use that same matrix for your wholesale customers. You can give them a bigger discount, whatever it is. I know that they're probably aware of what this price is, but if you're using your price matrix and discounting from that on a mechanical wholesale shop, you'll be able to give them a better discount overall, and they'll make more money and you'll make more money. So be careful how you use that matrix, but if you're going to use it, you really want to be competitive in the marketplace, and you don't want your customers to be calling somewhere else and getting a lower price on the parts because you didn't use the matrix with your wholesale customer.
Well, that's exactly what happened, Jer. One time I was at a dealership, and the dealership got a call from a customer, and they needed to replace their water pump. So they got the estimate from service on price of the part, price of the labor, And then they went down the street to a little corner garage and said, hey, what's it going to take to get a water pump? Well, the corner garage called the parts department, and the parts department quoted list price because he was a wholesale guy. So we quoted list and his discount off a list. Well, he turned around and quoted that list back to the customer along with his labor, and it just made the dealership look like the highest priced guy in town. So we have to be careful how we're quoting. We have to be careful how we're putting parts out into the marketplace, and we can't necessarily have a dual pricing arrangement. Now, the exception is when you get into collision parts, body shop sales, a lot of insurance companies will only pay list. However, I've talked to some guys that do charge matrix on their collision parts. They discount off of that, and the body shop works it out with a supplement to the insurance company. But that gets complicated, but the point is that it can happen and does happen at some point. So Jerry, if we're going to put together a matrix, there's some things we have to take into consideration, kind of planning before we get into it and figure out what we're going to do. We can't just go throw a matrix out there. I've seen a lot of guys say, call you at another dealer and say, Jerry, what's your matrix? Send it over, and I'm just going to copy that and use it for myself. That doesn't typically work. What do you think are the preparations that are most important to get ready to put a matrix in place and make sure it's really going to work for us?
Well, number one, Rick, I think you need to be aware of what the competition's selling for. So pick a few items and shop the competition. You also probably need to have some kind of sourcing strategy in place where you can separate out certain parts that maybe you don't want to charge that matrix on. You know, you might have some maintenance parts or air filters, maybe oil filters, where we're not going to be able to use the matrix on those. And you can isolate those from the matrix by putting them into a separate source. So you have to have different price codes, different price levels for different customers, and you obviously have to have some kind of a sourcing structure in place so that you can apply the matrix to the right parts. Accessories and boutique type items are obviously, the manufacturers are posting list prices on their website. I don't want to go and throw a matrix on top of that, and then they look at the manufacturer's website, see it's $19.99, call you up, it's $26.99. What's wrong with that? You know, we got to be careful with our sourcing strategy. We got to be careful. We shop the competition a little bit, and then we got to know what we're getting for margins.
So it gets a little complicated when you start putting all that stuff together. I've seen a lot of matrices backfire, and the parts manager just says, forget it, take it off, we're done, this doesn't work. And that's the wrong attitude, because you said something earlier, Jared, that's really important, and that is that a dealer deserves to get a good margin. If I'm not getting a good margin, I'm not here next year to support my customers and my employees, and there's a lot of pressures on margins and on costs. And if I'm not able to keep up and bring a fair return on investment to the owner's not going to stay around. And then we've got some real trouble. So a matrix has its place. And what we're talking about doing here is being real careful about how we establish the matrix, make sure it's working properly, and make sure that it's really going to do the job for us. So we've got this unique program that our guy Jack, we talked about Jack in our last video. He's our data processing guy and our programming genius. And Jack came up with this matrix analysis that is unique in the business. Nobody else does this. And it really gives you a feel for live matrix adjustments and exactly what it's going to do to your business. And the reason it works so well is we use your parts information of exactly what you sold in a given month, total part numbers, pieces, and dollars, and we look at the pricing levels that we've broken down into the matrix, and we look at the current matrix settings, the percentage that we have in place, and then we can apply some new settings and take a look at what the effect is. And the most telling part of this whole chart is all the way to the right here, and you can see in my 0 to 50 cent category, my average sales price was 71 cents. I added a few more points to my matrix, and now my average selling price goes to 82 cents. 145 in the next category, up to 163, and so on down the line. So, Jer, when you can see that change and you can see exactly what it's going to do to you, gives you a little confidence on how that matrix is going to play out.
Absolutely correct, Rick. And the other thing that's real important on that chart is if you look at the DCSI matrix sales dollars, that's the difference that we've made in gross profit dollars if you really look at it. The current matrix is you've got the percentages and you've got your estimated current sales, but once we change that matrix percentage, that's when you move to the DCSI matrix sales dollars. So it gives you a good idea of what kind of dollars you can put on the bottom line. It's a great tool, fabulous programming here, because it looks, like you said, at exactly what was sold the previous month and says, okay, let's make a couple changes here and there. We can tweak it around here and there and just make incremental changes. And you always want to be very careful when you're making changes to a matrix that's in place to make small adjustments. Small adjustments aren't as easily noticed. And you'll notice the percentages generally are higher on the lower end parts. Why is that? Well, they're less shopped around, and also you've always got your transaction costs to cover. So whether you're selling $1 part or a $100 part, you still have the cost of printing out the invoice, taking care of the customer. All those costs are still fixed no matter regardless of the price of the part. So we want to have a little bit more impact on the low end parts. And again, those things aren't shopped quite as readily as some of the higher end parts. When you give me a $500 bill, I'm going to see if that's really competitive in the marketplace. If you give me a $10 bill, a $20 bill, okay, yeah, move on. Let's go to the next story.
So, Jerry, you're right. What the concept behind this is just nickels, dimes, and quarters. And we can review this on a regular basis, and we do with our clients, to see if there's any room to improve. One of the things that is included in this is a multiplier from piece sales. So I can look at any category, like right here, this category of the $3 to $5. I sold 516 pieces in that category. Well, the change that I make over here is going to be higher for that particular part because I've got the volume working for me. So we do this with real sales information, the parts this dealership actually sold, and then we take and add up the difference. So if we took this matrix, put it into place, and sold the same exact parts or close to it, this dealer could realize another $7,500 a month in gross profit if they sold everything at retail. And they don't, so we have to adjust that. So typically, if a dealer's selling 25 to 30% of everything they sell at retail and at matrix, this matrix could put another $2,000 a month into the net profit category of this dealership. And as you can see, Jer, the changes we're talking about making are not big changes, and they're not noticeable. And again, it's not that we're out to get anybody, it's that we're trying to protect our margin and trying to keep our return on investment and our profitability where they need to be to give the owner back the return that he expects on this dealership that he owns. So, Jerry, when we're getting ready to put the matrix together, we got to know how the different DMS systems work. And we're dealing with, there's three major systems on the market, ADP, CDK, DealerTrack is one, our Reynolds and Reynolds is one, and there's a variety of others, but we run across those three on a very regular basis, and I think that a lot of people are still using those three systems. So if you want to do a matrix review on your store, contact your Dealership CSI senior consultant. Let them know I want to do a matrix review. We'll pull some data, put together a report like we show you here, do some analysis and help you reset your matrix if that's what it takes. If you are not a current Dealership CSI client, drop us an email at the DCSI Parts Guys at gmail.com. We put together a special package for our YouTube viewers, and we'll be able to pull some data, run the reports like we were talking about here for your own store, let you take a look at it and help you set up your matrix. So that's the DCSI Parts Guys at gmail.com. Just tell us you want to set up a matrix review and we'll get it done. And finally, don't miss out on part 4, the myth of the 40% margin. This is going to be the final in our series. We're going to talk about the setups. We're going to cover CDK, Rentals and Dealer Track, and we're going to show you the matrix setup, and we're going to show you the gross profit threshold setups on those 3 systems. So appreciate you watching us. If you like us, please subscribe, give us some likes, share it around with your friends, drop a few comments down below. And Jer, as usual, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. Let's go out and make some money.